Hi, good morning. My name is Landry Mugisha. I was born and raised in Burundi, where I studied, graduated, and have been working for the whole of my life. I am passionate about self-empowerment, developing tools of autonomy and prosperities of the people of Africa and the young people. I started my career at relatively young age. By the time I was 20, I started working on the radio, which allowed me to be a little bit famous and opened doors for me to try different and numerous stuff. I was able to travel within East Africa, see different stuff, understand different people, and see how people conceive the world. This gave me an overview of what I was supposed to do to better my life, and what came first was that if I was ever going to do something to prepare myself ahead, it also had to do something for my country, because I realized along my trips that my country, Burundi, is not very well known, and for the people who know the country, most of the time they know bad things. This set me to a journey fueled mostly with passion to present my country, which led me to creating a media online platform called Akezanet, which is still available today. And currently that allowed me to establish it as a company later on in 2013, which today allowed me to be running two companies. One, Keza.net, which is a media platform with the purpose of portraying Burundi in a very positive light and showing the great things this country has to offer to the world, and communication, marketing, PR, and branding company known as Akeza Trademark, where we serve companies, communities, NGOs, and different numerous people in services of communication and marketing. So one of the key topics that is very important for me is dreams, because dreams is what give you a purpose, and it's what sets you apart. And as I would have it, the topic that I'll be developing today is that young people, especially in East Africa, have to dream big. Why would they have to dream big, would you ask? It's a very normal thing. The young people have to dream big first because they need to. If you don't have a dream, you don't have a direction. You don't know where you're heading for. You don't know where you're going. And the young people have to dream big, because why dream small if you can dream big? You are young, you have nothing to lose, you are not rushing nowhere, you have the possibility and the opportunity to choose to do the great things. So why on earth would you choose to do little things, smaller things, unless you're not proud, unless you're not sure of yourself, unless you don't believe you can do great things? And believe now is a big word, because somehow in some places in the world, people believe they can do great things. Somehow, for reasons that we may understand sometimes, that we do not really need to understand some other times, people in Africa don't want to believe they can achieve great things, and there is a big problem. So the reasons people say they can't do great things is because they don't have the money, is because they don't have maybe a history track record of people around them doing great things, be it in their families, be it in their countries, be it in their region. And this will tell people that maybe people in China, people in America, people in the USA, maybe people in the Middle East can do great things, but then they can't. But that's all totally wrong. Because if someone wants to do great things, it all starts in their minds. It's all a conception of your brains. You have to figure out what you want. Then you will figure out how you want it. Then you will figure out what you need to make it happen. So there are some tools at the disposal of the young people that constitutes the why they should dream big. First and foremost, when you are young, that's the period of time where you set course for your whole life. The things you do today, the decisions you take today, the actions you do today would determine what happens into your life in 10, in 20, in 30, in 50 years. What you do today, the knowledge you acquire today, the actions you do today, the people you associate yourself with, the work you put in place, and the things you believe you can do today determine what you actually ultimately will become or will do in the future. So I would say young people have time. They obviously are very young. Most of them have their parents who take care of everyday needs. So most of the time you have your time to figure out what you want to do and how you want to do it. You have time to think and you have time to put things in place. And this is very important because grown-ups people don't have much time. They have kids to care of, they have responsibility to care of, they have their jobs to deliver, they have a lot of things to take care of. There are problems in life, in families and everything. Grown-up people have big issues to take care of and they are pressing. Sometimes they cannot put it on tomorrow, on the day after tomorrow. Young people can. Actions you do while you still have time will allow you to go far in the future, to go faster in the future, to be set apart in the future. So time is a luxury and an asset that young people have that maybe more grown-ups people do not have. What else do young people have? They have energy. I mean, a young person thinks about doing something, you go ahead and do it. You feel like playing football, you go play football. After playing football, you feel like running, you go running. After running, you feel like playing basketball, you go play basketball. You have energy. The young people's energy doesn't seem to end. Young people have energy, be it in thoughts, be it physical, be it in mind. This energy allows young people to be able to suffer tough times with stronger and more resilience because they have energy. This energy will always sink in and help them go through the situation. Young people should use their energy accordingly, and once again, energy is a competitive advantage. You should use that energy to do greater things. So you have this thing that has an expiry date that is great. You've got to think, how do I want to use this? You know, obviously young people need to dream big because they have to. I mean, who doesn't want a bright future? Who doesn't want to be successful? Who doesn't want the good things of life? Well, when you're young, that's a great period of time to sit down and figure out how the people who did it made it and decide if you want to join them, figure out what you need to do to get there, and then set course and do it. That's pretty much important. Like for young people in East Africa, a whole region looks at us, expect us to deliver. You know, our grandfathers fought for independence, which was like a huge achievement. We are still fighting for economic independence. Who is going to achieve us? A lot of people look at us and they hope we can do it. But can we do it? Do we think we can do it? Are we working to make sure we can do it? Because everybody else think we are the one to do it. Do we think we can do it? Can we make sure we can do it? That's important for the young people to understand. They have to dream big because they need to. They need to dream big now while they still can dream. And young people need to dream big, especially today, because they have the tools to. We have technology. I mean, we have a whole wide web, World Wide Web, where you can access all kinds of information, where you can learn all kinds of knowledges, you can gather all kinds of capabilities that you can learn from here and use in another country without even moving from your room. This is an interesting period of time. We have the technology, which is an enabler, which is a differentiator, and we have to ask ourselves, what are we doing of all this technology at our disposal? Our parents didn't have that much of technology. They didn't have the facilities that we have today. They didn't have the possibilities that we have today. They didn't have the opportunities that we have today. They couldn't have the whole world in the palm of their hand. We can today with just a cell phone. We have mobile money, we have the internet, we have the applications. We have seen the world transform just next door because of technology. So we can do the same. So the young people today have an opportunities that no other generation of African has ever had. So for those people to dream big actually should come naturally, because not only we can afford to, but we have the tools to. And today more than ever, we basically have more of the same tools like anybody else in the world, which is an interesting time, because we cannot pretend that Chinese are better than us, that Americans are better than us, because most of the time we have the same tools at our disposal. Of course, we have a region, and this region is supposed to help us become one people. And this unity is supposed to allow movement of people, movement of goods, movement of capitals, movement of knowledge. And we also still need to figure out how we as young people can push that agenda, because we always believe the politicians are going to do it, the grown-ups are going to do it, but maybe there's some people that the young people, no matter how young they are, can push. You don't need to be an old person to bring in innovation. You don't need to be an old person to work on a technology that can change life in East Africa. You don't need to have a particular age to think of a technology that can be adopted all over East Africa, all over Africa, all over the world. You don't. We have seen young kids of the year 5, 6, 10 who bring in great innovations. So basically everybody can bring in innovation, provided you set course to it and you have the gift for it. Some of the people do even have the gift, but they are not trying their gifts. So it's important for the young people to understand that today is a very particular time where we can have bigger dreams, and we have the tools to make the dreams happen, and those tools and technologies and the possibilities make us believe once again that the dreams that we have are valid. Now that we have figured out what we need to do, hence dream big, we also have to figure out how do we do it. And I would say the first thing that Africa needs to do in terms of dreaming big is to move from a consumer to a producer. That's the biggest shift Africa still needs to do. You look at every other country that inspires today, they produce most of their goods, they produce most of their food, they produce their own technologies. So what are we producing? Africa has been famous for producing quality raw materials. I have never seen a nation that is developed from raw materials. It has never happened. It didn't happen in America. It didn't happen in Europe. It didn't happen in Asia. It cannot happen in Africa. Every nation that is a successful nation is a manufacturer nation. We need to produce our own food and transform our own food. It's important. There's no such a thing as a developed nation that cannot feed itself. And food should not be just basic goods. No. It's from crops to their transformation in numerous things. Africa should be an exporting continent. East Africa should be a region that is propelled by its exportations. It's important. So we have to figure out. Most of East African countries produce coffee, they produce tea, some of the greatest quality But we can't even transform our own coffee. We can't even transform our own tea. That's wrong. I mean, we've been independent for 50 plus years, some 6 years, and we still cannot afford to transform our own agricultural goods. That's terrible. We need to make our own goods. We need to make our own food. We need to make our own fridge. These things have been existing in the world for years now, 100 years. We can't make our own, not even one. Well, some nations can make some things. I wouldn't say most nations in Africa can make most of the things they need. We can't even say the things that Kenya does not produce, they get it in Uganda, they get it in Burundi, they get it in Tanzania. They don't. We all have to go outside of East Africa. So a nation that does not produce their own good cannot be a prosperity nation. It's impossible. Prosperity comes from somewhere. The cost of the goods needs to be lower. We need to export our goods to get foreign money so we can keep our own money and bring in foreign money in our economy. That's how you become powerful. That's how you become a dominant force. That's how you become a valuable partner in the grand scheme of international relations, because you have something to offer. What does our region produce? This is not just a question for the government. This is not just a question for the bigger corporation. This is a question for the young people. In every single little nation, the young people bring change. You look today, all those technological companies that are the biggest companies in the world, they were founded by young people. Literally young kids dropping out of school. Kids. Change in the world is always brought in by young people. What can a young people in some village in East Africa conceive that can change the whole lives of East Africans? It's a great conversation that we need to have with ourselves continually, because that's where all change comes from. That's where power comes from. What solutions do we have to the most problems we face every day? What can we do to have our own solutions to our own problems that can be internationally valid? It's important to reach the international standards in our production, in our work, in our quality, in what we can propose. That's the only way our dream big becomes a reality. And I think the key question everyone has to ask themselves if you want to do something is, what do you have? What do you have as a person? What do you have as a nation? What do you have as a region? It's important because everyone has something. It may be a little thing, but everyone has something. So before you go into any kind of exchange, you always have to ask yourself, what do you have? I would say that question applies internally, like on a personal level, on a state level, on a nation's level, because you have a region where 6 countries have to come together to promote change and prosperity with a common goal. But how do we make a common goal of 6 nations work? What does every single nation bring on the table? Is every single nation valuable in the exchange? Do we know what every nation can provide? Do we appreciate it? Can we respect each other? Because there's no exchange if there's no respect. Do we understand every nation as valuable? Do we understand every nation? Do we know East Africa? That's another question. So it's important, and I believe for the people promoting East Africa, it is going to be important to allow the people to move naturally in trades, but also just for the purpose of visiting East Africa, because on a global scale, East Africa is the part of Africa where you have the safaris. It's basically a huge touristic destination in its own capacity. So I would say students should be having trips around the countries. Like this year they go in that country, next year they go into another country, just like that, because they need to understand the region they are called to build. If people are not moving in the region for all kinds of purpose, to understand the region, to know the region, to appreciate the region, this might be difficult. So I will also say, if everybody is going to come and appreciate East Africa, maybe East Africans need to appreciate East Africa more. They need to know East Africa more. I will give an example. Let's take technology, and we use all our technology to sell East Africans, and every single person is selling another country. This is going to bring a huge boom in tourism. If everybody takes on to social media and talks about East Africa, not just as their own country, but as a region, as a destination, as a possibilities, because people in Kenya can always reach an audience that we cannot reach. People in Burundi can always reach an audience that we can reach. We cannot reach. I can give you an example. We in East Africa are basically the only nation that speaks French in Burundi, maybe a bit of it in Rwanda. So we can have access easily to the French-speaking countries than any other East African country. Once we figure out what we can offer each other as nations, as people, as countries within the region, and that dynamism is being developed, we can figure out now a sort of East African identity. What we as East Africans, as a bloc, as a region, can we offer to the world? What can we offer to the world? Maybe there's a young kid in technology in Kenya who could find his counterpart in Bujumbura and they'd bring up something great, but they need to meet first. They need to find each other, would I say. So it is important for us to understand what we have as individual nation, see how that can be helpful in our internal exchanges, be it of goods, of competencies, of knowledge, of people. And then as a region, we figure out what we can offer the world, because there's definitely something we can offer to the world. We just need to figure it out. And when it's out there, everybody will say, this is a great contribution from East Africa. I would give an example. The mobile money industry is much more developed in East Africa than anywhere in the world. So that's one thing that we could maybe also propose to the world, one among many other things. But we need to figure it out, and then we see, what do we have, what can we offer. One last thing, as I end up, I once was going to discuss with a group of young people about entrepreneurship, and I was during the workshop, I was going to ask one person, was going to say, what's your goal? But somehow in the heat of the action, I said, what's your dream? And then he looked at me and was lost and was like, I don't know. Nobody has ever asked me that question. I was literally stunned. Young man, brilliant, obviously, 18 years old, maybe 19, and no one has ever asked him, what's your dream? That's a tragedy. That's literally a tragedy. Young men don't know their dream because nobody ever made it seem like it's important. If I had one thing to leave you with today, it would be, you sit down in a quiet place and you ask yourself, what is my dream? Once you figure out what your dream is, you can then set out to figure out what is supposed to be the magnitude of your dream. Until next time, take care.